Right now, something unusual is happening. While tech companies are laying off tens of thousands of workers, another industry is quietly hiring them. And not slowly, aggressively. In the first few months of 2026 alone, more than 45,000 tech jobs were cut globally. At the same time, energy employment in the US has continued to grow. Not dramatically, but consistently. And if you're working in tech right now, this creates a strange situation. Because on one hand, your role might still feel stable. Your team is intact, your company is performing. But on the other hand, you're seeing the signals. Layoffs across the industry, fewer openings, more competition. And the question starts to shift from, is tech still safe, to something more practical. If things change, where would I even go? And that's where this gets interesting. Because energy companies are now actively hiring tech talent. And they're doing it for a very specific reason. To understand why this is happening, you have to look at what's driving the current wave of change. And that's AI. But not just AI as software, AI as infrastructure. Because every AI system, every model, every query, every process runs on physical systems. Data centers, servers, cooling systems, power grids. And all of that requires energy. A lot of it. This is why companies are shifting how they invest. Instead of putting most of their capital into hiring, they're putting it into building capacity, compute capacity, infrastructure, energy supply. Because without that, AI simply doesn't scale. And that changes the role of the energy sector completely. It's no longer just supporting the economy. It's becoming a core layer of the tech ecosystem. Which means demand for energy isn't just growing, it's accelerating. And when demand accelerates, hiring follows. You can see this most clearly in data centers. AI has created an explosion in demand for compute, and that demand has to be handled somewhere, which means more facilities, more infrastructure, more power. But here's the problem. The industry isn't keeping up. It's estimated that up to 340,000 data center roles could go unfilled by the end of 2026. And more than half of data center operators already report struggling to find qualified candidates. At the same time, a significant portion of new data center projects in the US are being delayed. Not because demand isn't there, but because of constraints, power limitations, supply chain issues, and talent shortages, which creates a bottleneck. And when infrastructure becomes the bottleneck, everything depends on fixing it. That's where hiring accelerates, and that's where tech talent starts to become relevant. But it's not just data centers. It's the entire energy system. Electricity demand in the US is rising steadily, driven by data centers, industrial growth, electrification across multiple sectors. And in some regions, the growth is much more aggressive. Texas, for example, is expecting close to 10% annual electricity demand growth through 2027. That's not incremental. That's pressure. Pressure on the grid, on generation, on stability. And modern energy systems aren't simple. They require real-time monitoring, load balancing, automation, predictive systems. In other words, they require software. They require data. They require systems thinking, which is exactly where tech skills come in. Because energy is no longer just mechanical. It's becoming digital. Now here's where the real problem shows up. Even with all this demand, energy companies can't hire fast enough Because the talent simply isn't there. The industry is facing a structural shortage. Not enough engineers are entering the field. A large portion of the workforce is approaching retirement. And at the same time, the skill requirements are changing. Energy companies don't just need traditional engineers anymore. They need people who understand data systems, automation, software integration. But that talent has historically gone into tech, not energy, which creates a mismatch. High demand on one side, available talent on the other, but no direct connection between the two. And that's why you're starting to see this shift. Energy companies are actively going after tech professionals. Not because it's a trend, but because they don't have another option. So what does this look like in practice? What roles are we actually talking about? Some of the fastest growing positions include SCADA engineers, working on control systems that connect software with physical infrastructure. Automation engineers, building and maintaining systems that manage energy operations. Data analysts, optimizing performance across grids, facilities, and systems. Cybersecurity specialists, protecting critical infrastructure from threats. These roles sit at the intersection of technology and physical systems. And that's what makes them different. They're not purely software, but they're not traditional engineering either. They require both. And that's where tech professionals start to fit in. Because many of the underlying skills, programming, data handling, systems thinking, are directly transferable. The gap isn't capability, it's awareness. So why is the hiring so aggressive? Why now? Because the timeline is tight. Infrastructure needs to scale quickly. AI demand isn't slowing down. Energy demand isn't stabilizing. And delays are expensive. We're already seeing large-scale investments being made, billions going into data centers, billions into energy production. Long-term agreements between tech companies and energy providers. These are not short-term bets, they're commitments. And those commitments require execution, which means hiring. At the same time, energy companies are competing for the same talent pool as tech, which increases urgency. Because if they don't hire, they fall behind. And if they fall behind, the entire system slows down. That's why this isn't passive hiring. It's aggressive, targeted, and increasing. So when you look at the full picture, this shift starts to make sense. Energy companies aren't randomly hiring tech talent. They're being forced to, by demand, by infrastructure constraints, by a lack of internal capabilities. And for you, that changes how you should think about your position. Because this isn't about leaving tech. It's about understanding where your skills are valuable beyond it. Because right now, most people are still looking in the same places. The same companies, the same roles, the same paths. While opportunity is expanding somewhere else. And the key question becomes, where do I actually fit in that shift? Because in many cases, you're closer than you think. The challenge is seeing it clearly. So instead of trying to piece that together on your own, I built something simple. A short quiz that maps your current skills to roles in industries where demand is growing. So you can see where you fit, what your options are, and what your next step could look like. It takes a few minutes, and it gives you clarity. If you want to check it out, you'll find it in the description below.